All right, welcome to the Essential Libertarians, giving you the tools for self-governance. I'm your host, Kareem Mays, and I have returning the coolest guitarist around from A Common Crown. They're famous. And also Kyle Matovcik. He's been on with notable names such as Rollo Tomasi, Creatrix, and also Commander Philabonte. What up, Kyle?
Oh, nothing, man. Just living the good life, staying busy. That's all. I had Dave DeCamp on the show yesterday for a lot of foreign policy talk. I've been a little bit removed from that space, but kind of trying to still maintain, wear all the hats I possibly can wear at once. So,
Wait,
that's kind of what's been up with me.
you don't want to invade China and Iran right now because they're a global national security threat or something like that. I don't know what
Well,
they're
what we should do is just nuke all of them. Let's
Yeah,
just nuke all of them. Let's get it over with. I mean, if we're gonna have the global empire, then we might as well assert our dominance in the form of a nuclear bomb to all the countries that we hate, right? I mean, if you
that's
ask
all.
Nikki Haley, she'd be happy with that policy, probably.
She probably would. She's like, that's a
Yeah.
whole lot of democracy. And
Right.
what's worse is, I honestly believe Christian Zionists would be like, yeah, that sounds great. That's in the Bible somewhere. I'm like, can you show me where your beliefs come? I'm not even asking like the whole book. Just like, give me a citation. Where is this said? Where is this reference? They're like, well, doesn't exactly say that, but there's somewhere, someone told me. I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, I think it's because they believe that my understanding is that the people of Israel, a specific group, are considered God's chosen people, and therefore, when this whole war breaks out, then it's supposed to bring back the return of Jesus Christ. I know some people aren't quite as dogmatic and rigid on their belief in that, but I can't say for sure. It's pretty weird because I feel like a lot of like the boomers were kind of like indoctrinated to love Israel, and the younger
Yeah.
generation doesn't seem to do quite so much. So it is interesting, at least me working in the
Yeah.
automotive field, kind of seeing some of the, I don't want to say boomers, but like late Gen Xers. I think they'd be in like their maybe late 40s to mid 50s. Them saying, well, Joe Biden was over in Israel, but he's not going to our border, right? So,
Yes.
and then people like
There's
my
a good
dad.
thing
Yeah.
there. You know what I'm seeing actually, which is good and bad at the same time, is here's what I'm seeing. Yeah, the younger generation's like, maybe, I wasn't exactly told to like this, so I don't know. Even Ian Smith, is not far off from our age, is like, hey, why is DC Drano in another country when it's election year and all these things are going on? I'm starting to see people's, unfortunately, when their style of life or when their living conditions go a little bit down, then they start to pay attention. Oh, money's going to Ukraine. I can't make my bills. I don't like that. Oh, money's going to, wait, money was always going to Israel. Everybody was, oh, okay. But now I think two things have happened. A, people are having trouble with their living conditions and they're like, why is this money going there? We don't like this anymore. So, like,
Mhm.
hey, Thomas Massey is voting it. This is good. And then also people are saying, like, wow, the amount of violence that they're seeing is probably getting a lot of people to say I don't want any part in this because I don't want to be complicit, aside from the
Mhm.
governments, and B, I think it is creating sympathy for the condition. Now
Right.
I can even say, like, I don't like any government at all. I think
Sure.
it's terrible, and I'm a fan of something that I read called Aristotan. I think the people who are moderate on both sides would probably be better off
Mhm.
starting their own, if you want to call it Confederates. I don't like the word state, but a Confederate territory or something like that, because there's moderates on both sides. There's extremists on both sides. I'm not, of course, I wouldn't deny that. But
Sure.
the good thing is people are waking up now. And I will say there's a disproportionate, amount of force. What's funny is it doesn't seem, and I've argued this with the Yemenis and with this, it doesn't seem advanced technology really makes you win a war. I think there are people in a camp who just think if you have advanced toys, then you will win. Particularly the neocons and some of the, oh, I have advanced toys. I have a javelin. I have this.
Mhm.
Well, I guess you just win every war by default in 2 days. You just hit like a video game. You just hit some buttons and I win.
Right.
And it's not like that. I've even seen some of these people get mad, like, oh, we bombed the Houthis. Why don't they just stop? Like, how's that? How is a couple bombs gonna
Well,
do?
yeah, the problem is that specifically in the situation with Yemen and the Houthis is that I think we see this in a lot of foreign policy situations where it's essentially the concept of blowback, where when you decimate a population, which we did, the U.S. and the Saudis did in Yemen, and Israel's doing in Palestine, then you embolden the most radical elements of that government because people look for a little bit more structure. People look for someone that's going to, restore them to their former glory or do what they consider as justice. So, prior to October 7th, Hamas wasn't quite as widely supported as they are now.
Yeah.
But I mean, once again, when you embolden the most radical elements of a government, or government, if you will, quote unquote, then you're absolutely going to generate more hatred from this group, and you're going to make them, incentivized to act in more destructive ways rather than they would if you were perhaps negotiating with them in good faith. But as we see with a lot of these situations when it comes specifically to the Middle East, that the U.S. and Israel are never good faith. They never engage in good faith. So therefore, the most radical elements of those dissident governments, feel emboldened to do worse things.
Yeah, it's kind of like they can't negotiate. And one funny thing is, even like the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire was saying, like, oh, okay, well, there's French vessels being guarded by like a French thing, and I'm like, well, to me, it seems like there was a TikToker who used to like see people like cut up like an orange and like put it through a machine and do this, and he's like with a knife and just would do this. Actually, made millions of dollars just doing that, which is kind of funny. But
Yeah.
to me, everyone's like, oh, what solution? What if we bomb the Houthis? What if we do that? I'm like, why can't, I'm not saying, Dementia Joe is great at negotiating or staying awake. But I think it would be better if he just said, like, okay, look, I'm going to negotiate a ceasefire or something. I'm going to get some aid in there, which I think is possible, because that's how we're going to do that. You stop doing what you're doing, because that's why they said they were going to do that. And people say, oh, you're placating. And my response is, well, the aggression was started by one side. Fine. Another side responded extremely disproportionately, I would say. And now the Houthis, in my opinion, probably saw this and said, hey, we're going to help them, probably because commonalities in religion and in the region. And for me, I'm just asking the question I guess nobody's asking. Well, why don't, instead of just bombing them endlessly and endlessly and endlessly, which the Saudis couldn't do it, I don't think America will do it any better. Why not just negotiate with them? And I know some of the boomer cons are like, oh my God, you don't support. No, I don't. I think this is out of all the things you could do in America, Hawaii's still problems. Flint, Michigan's water ain't that great that I know of. Yes, there is issues on the border. Like I don't look at, there are problems on the border that I don't think we solve it with a wall. I think there's other ways, libertarian ways to solve it. There are inflation issues. There's other issues in my opinion, with infrastructure. There's issues with rising crime in cities. And the best thing you can do is bomb the poorest nation in the Middle East. That's the response to the Joe Biden administration. I mean, that seems beyond kind of dumb.
Well, yeah. So Anthony Blinken and a lot of his Joe Biden staff have said that Joe Biden is like the most personally involved when it comes to Israel. And there have also been articles that came out where he said that he feels a very, very deep and personal connection with Israel. And, as far back as I want to say, probably 10, 15 years ago, he was saying, if there was no Israel, we'd have to create an Israel. There's this video, and I always laugh because it's like right before he got really like bad into his dementia. He said, if I were a Jew, I'd be a Zionist. But my dad told me I did not need to be a Jew to be a Zionist. The nation of Israel is essential to America. I'm pretty sure that's like a verbatim.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. And the interesting thing is, if you watch Middle Nation, maybe even have him on, because you're good at getting on some high profile guests. Chad Bolson. He I guess a lot of people call him the white Malcolm X, or like the Muslim Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
He makes good points. And one thing he said is it's not so much like, oh, Israel's bad or this or that. It's that the United States military apparatus is utilizing Israel behind the guise of religion as a military satellite or a vassal state.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're doing that, they're deteriorating relations between people who otherwise got along pretty good. I saw some pretty good evidence they did get along pretty good. So for me, that's really what people I think need to real. That's how I look at it. The United States empire needs to fall.
Mm-hmm.
We need to stop having vassal states. And I know I talked about this before, but I am in favor still, and even talk of secession. Now, there's different ideas, but yeah. And also, Insanity is Free it helped me start up a website. He's going to join in the discussion about various topics,
Cool.
running Anarch Unity. So I've been looking actually at other schools of anarchy as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
but just to get your thoughts, do you think actually the United States bombing Yemen will have any significant effect on what the Houthis do, or do you think Joe Biden will drop bombs for maybe like a while and then just be like,
Uh,
okay,
I'm I'm pretty sure he's going to continue to do strikes. Actually, Kyle Anslow, and I pulled this up because I keep in touch with him and some of the other guys from antiwar.com quite a bit.
mhm.
Biden admits bombing Yemen is not stopping the Houthis, but says he will continue ordering strikes. When asked if bombing Yemen is working, the president said, "Well, when you say working, are they stopping the Houthis? No. Are they going to continue? Yes." Biden told reporters. So, clearly he's not very concerned. I'm going to retweet it, but he's not very concerned about whether or not it's going to stop them or not. I think he's just perfectly okay with dropping bombs on, once again, the poorest country in the Middle East,
Mhm.
because that probably satisfies his donors and stuff like that, and also probably gives a little bit of a pat on the back to Israel and a lot of the Middle Eastern allies that we have over there, which would essentially just be Israel. But
Yeah.
also it's the idea that Iran is like the state sponsor of terror. We hear a lot about that, and you know Corey Mills and a lot of like the neoconservatives and neoliberals will always say that like the Houthis are a Iran proxy, so therefore, it's okay if we're committing genocide against the Yemenis. So I think that's kind of like the basis that they kind of want to stick it in the eye of the Yemenis, is because they think it's going to stick it in the eye of Iran. And we know that the neocons' longstanding goal is a war with Iran, and then
Mhm.
obviously a war with China and a war with Russia as well. But Iran has been a big centerpiece of the neocon foreign policy for go back decades.
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't personally think I think he'll keep doing it because he wants to, I guess, show his either donors or satisfy the military industrial complex, or maybe Lloyd Austin obviously is sat on the board of Raytheon, so that's probably what it is. Probably like, hey, drop more bombs so we can buy more bombs. Hey, but it could be as simple as that. And yeah, okay, it gets him that little pat on the back from, like, I guess Saudi Arabia or Israel or UAE or whatever. I don't think it'll deter anything, is what I was telling people. I know people with the, like, NATO flag in their bio and all that, like, ridiculous boomer con stuff are like, no, Kareem, you said the Houthis would win. We're going to show them. I'm like, what are you going to do? Like, what
Well,
are
and
you,
that's the thing I was gonna say is like Israel is not their only ally in that region, and Saudi, UAE, fucking their coalitions have been like fucking up Yemen for a while now on the US dime and with US arms sales to back them. And that's one of the things that's fucking hilarious is when anyone wants to claim that Jews control everything, it's hilarious because it's like the House of Saud is the richest royal family on the planet, and they got
Mm-hmm.
rich off petrodollar,
mm,
and they're fucking like they're like part of the vassals in the Middle East. Israel is a vassal, Ukraine is a
Sure.
vassal. Like to a certain extent, there are very multiple European countries which are vassals. And a lot of these are vassals because they're all part of the same basic money making scheme of we're going to pretend that this is about stopping terrorism or some sort of shit like that, but really it's about protecting and enhancing trade routes. And like that's one of the reasons that they don't like Russia, because hey, the ice is melting up there and they're starting to get a new trade route, and they might not be beholden to the West anymore, and there's a whole lot of resources in the melting ice, and we got to do something about that. And it's also one of the things that they, you know, did the whole like Israel thing now with, like, Joe Biden unfroze that 6 billion, and then suddenly Hamas had a bunch of funding, Hamas notoriously funded by Iran, to do an attack that literally Israel knew about and everybody knew about, and it was on a day that it was supposed to be and that they had been warning about for a while, and then they just sort of let it happen. And now Israel's like, gosh darn, you know, we've been giving so much of the strategic weapons stockpile to Ukraine. Now we need more. You need to replenish it. And this is after like they've said that for like maybe 8 months. And then they're like, hey, now we've got the reason to do that. You give us more weapons, we'll deal with Hamas and Iran. And then the U.S. just gets to finish their Middle Eastern shit Sunday with, you know, attacking Yemen more directly. And, you know, to be fair, a civilian cargo ship was attacked. And that's like, you know, a reasonable pretext from a statist perspective. But it's also like, maybe there wouldn't be so many attacks if the U.S. wouldn't consistently stir the pot and be a vassal controller in the region.
Yeah. I will say, though, when I guess what they called it, Operation Prosperity Garden, and I can double check with anti-war, I think that's what it was called, his so-called coalition, which was funny. And then like all, if you want to call them vassal states, or like France, Britain, they're like, I think everybody but Britain, which go figure, Britain's going to kind of, I feel like Britain's the puppy dog of the United States. It's just like, you know, okay, whatever you want to do, you know, we'll do, like Rishi Sunak's like, okay, Biden. But everybody else dropped out. They're like, we don't even want to do this, which to me kind of showed a significant point that even though we throw a weight around, other countries just said, nope, we're not interested. Even though they particularly probably back in the Iraq days would have been like, yeah, you know, they had a lot of coalition there. But now it really seems that the empire has no legitimacy anymore. It's just a matter of time to get rid of it.
Or they want you to think that so that they have more pretext for more military action. We need to get our legitimacy back, justify our rally around the flags, our false flags, and our wars. I think that's a psyop. I think that they want us to believe that their legitimacy is at risk so that we feel the need to grow our cocks to shove it in the Middle East again.
Well, let's see. Well, we'll see. How about this? I'm not black-pilled. I'm not white-pilled.
I am black-pilled.
I know. You got to be negative all the time. But I think we'll see. We'll have to see, because empire. Because here's the fact of the matter is this: whether or not empires don't last long, and as far as I'm concerned, this empire is at its either end or it's going to fracture off, or we'll see what happens. But I don't think I think what will happen is that they'll try bombing for a while. They won't get deterred. Eventually, they'll come to the same conclusion the Saudis did. History does repeat itself. So,
well, part of the reason why the Saudis stopped going after the Yemenis so hard, I was talking to Dave DeCamp about this yesterday, is that, well, he was telling me about this, I should say, is that the Yemenis were starting to get good at bombing their oil fields, and there was a pretty good ceasefire that had been holding since, I want to say it was January last year, where there were no airstrikes. There was some limited fighting on the ground, but no airstrikes. So the situation over there wasn't great, but it was definitely better than, you know, the status quo there for quite a few years. So I think it's in Saudi Arabia's best interest, and they've even come out against striking the Houthis, because I think they realize that if shit really starts to pop off there, then a lot of the Saudis are going to have trouble exporting oil all over the world, because if the Houthis want to fuck around, then they can really, you know, damp up trade in the Red Sea, and they can also kind of contain the Saudis, not in any great degree, but I think they kind of want to keep the coast clear so that way they can operate without any kind of distraction or anything like that. And one thing that I was kind of thinking about too, and Dave and I both kind of pondered this together, was if they block the Red Sea, they're going to have to go around over like northern Africa. And where else does the U.S. tend to stick their nose in and really disturb?
Northern Africa,
Somalia.
Yeah, fun fact: Somalia is the longest running U.S. war now that they're out of Afghanistan. So Fuck AFRICOM.
Well,
Fuck
but
you.
you know what? You know what's also good? Somalia had the best recovery after not having a state. So honestly, if you want the best government of this century, it's probably Somalia in the sense of how much they improved. Not that I want to live there, but and they're not anarchy, but they were close. I'm actually curious. I'll throw one curveball at you. I know everybody's seen it now, and actually, I think we three kind of have a better opinion of that. Javier Milei went to the World Economic Forum and said, like, okay, I don't like socialism. We need to, the West is in danger. I'm a little skeptical, or collectivism is all bad. And I said, well, not exactly. I said to myself, hey, it's kind of weird to go to the World Economic Forum, but he did. I'm not going to say everything. I disagree with everything he said, but the thing that kind of gets me is, I would consider Argentina part of the global South. I don't know if I'm geography correct, but it's not part of the West. So why is, like, I would say if I'm an ANCAP, hardcore ANCAP, I care about like my house in Pennsylvania and maybe like my neighbor not throwing, stuff. So I think I don't really like, because I know you and Creatrix or Brandy, if I'm saying that right. Like there's this whole thing about like the West, guys. And I'm like, you know what? How about you just worry about fixing your local town or commune or thingy or everything around you? B, I think involuntary, because I read Kropotkin's book and I've read stuff that's outside the ANCAP sphere. I don't think collectivism is the problem, I think the problem is involuntary subjugation to a system that you didn't agree to, which Lysander Spooner agree. I'm curious, Kyle, like, what's your take on Milei in that speech? And obviously,
I have been pretty Milei agnostic, and people have kind of criticized me for just criticizing him when he's doing things that I don't personally agree with. And when I just say, "Hey, that's cool," people are like, "Well, why aren't you more excited?" Like, I'm very, very agnostic on Malay because, like, first of all, I don't know shit about Argentina. Second of all, when you're coming out as like this fervent Zionist and you have this, you're waving this Ukraine flag, and you line up with a lot of like the U.S. foreign policy goals, I don't like that. But we also have to be objective and say, okay, well, an anarcho-capitalist who ran on a anarcho-capitalist platform that got elected to president in Argentina, while my understanding, once again, of the situation is very, very limited, they were going through some rough times. So that required a little bit of a radical shift. Well, you could perhaps make the argument that we're going through rough times here in America, perhaps not as rough as Argentina, but it's just interesting to see that a population really, really took to that message so much so that they elected the guy. And when you're in Argentina, clearly your stance on, the what do they call it? The axis of evil, right? The new axis of evil, as Mike Johnson had dubbed it. Number one, China; number two, Russia; number three, Iran. If you don't like those countries and you're in Argentina, you don't really have that much influence over how the global empire is going to go. Now, if you're the president of the United States, now we're having a different conversation. So it's awesome to see that he's, slashing government regulations, slashing agencies, like all that stuff. When it comes to government, he seems to be doing a great job. And I think that we should praise him for that and also celebrate the fact that he's bringing libertarian ideals into reality. But we can also criticize him like, hey, you're meeting up with Bill Clinton. Like, that's kind of weird. You're speaking at the World Economic Forum stuff. But even if you're disagreeing with them and bringing the libertarian message to there, it's kind of a weird place to do it at. That's strange. The whole, medical treatment from 2020 and 2021 kind of stuff, that's kind of weird too. But, once again, domestic policy, I couldn't be happier. That's awesome. But once again, just like the foreign policy stuff.
And here's the thing, like, it's not just that, because you talk about domestic policy and regulations. He hired a guy a woman he was very critical of, like when she was campaigning against him, and he was very critical of her. But now, like, as stock and standard politician shit goes, has her in his cabinet. This woman is Patricia Bullrich, and Patricia Bullrich is a drug warrior. Patricia Bullrich loves a drug war, and when she got appointed, she said, Argentina needs order. We will be relentless against crime, and we will wage a relentless fight against drug trafficking. It's simple. whoever makes them pays for them. And also, and like basically that's being like, if you are part of the drug trade, like in anything other than a personal use capacity, we are going to absolutely gut you. That's anti-libertarian. It's also anti-libertarian to have a facial recognition super state, which is something he proposed. It's also anti-libertarian to have a prison industrial complex. Basically, he wants to make it easier to lock people up, especially minors. And he also wants like everybody who is in prison to be a part of a work program.
Does your internet cut out?
Sorry, sometimes my internet fucks up. And so like he wants all of that, and he also wants all of that alongside dollarization, making the U.S. a vassal state of, the Argentinian economy a vassal of the U.S. economy, and like a bunch of this other stuff. I think his domestic policy has a lot to be desired when it comes to actually being libertarian, and I think his criminalization of protests with his austerity measures is exactly the kinds of things that we should oppose. Like, imagine in America, like if like the Trump protesters, who like all had their faces exposed during January 6th. Imagine if they were all fined as part of their protest because they were in an illegal place and they were they were like, so he says that these protesters should be fined if we can see their face. He went around with facial recognition cameras to do it, and he criminalized protesting with masks and holding sticks. And since open carry is already prohibited there, that basically means you don't have the right to bear arms. It's like, and so all of that, imagine the outrage from the Libertarian Party people who are claiming that in violation of Donald Trump, blah, blah, is somehow a grave threat to the rest of us. Imagine that. Or imagine if the Canadian truckers all had their faces scanned and they were all charged for blocking traffic there. It's one of those things where, because the traffic was blocked for a right-wing cause in some other places, the right-wingers that are normally against this sort of thing are fine with that being allowed. But since it's happening from the commies who want, to not starve to death under an austerity economy with an already crippled peso devalued by half, where like landlords can now charge rent in the dollar, like all of this means that basically they can like jack up rent prices hugely and immediately evict whoever they want, and like fuck the economy, fuck the common person, and the government shouldn't step in and give them any of the money that they stole in order to be the government to begin with. So to me, this is very much just it's not even a good domestic policy from a libertarian perspective.
Okay, I'll give you I did a lot of looking into him, and I'll give you the good, bad, and the ugly. I do agree with most of what your assessment is, Kyle. That's kind of why I wanted to have you on to talk about it, because a lot of people are just like, ooh, post a quote. Look, he came and said stuff at the WEF. Is some of what he said at the WEF correct? A lot. Would I agree with it? Yes, free market capitalism is great, innovation, and I love free markets. But my problem is, yes, aligning with U.S. foreign policy to me is weird. Now, Argentina, you don't have that much say over it. But to me, if you're an anarcho-capitalist or somebody who really wants freedom, then yeah, it's good he didn't sign up with BRICS, but then don't support anything. I would not support Ukraine. I would not support Russia. I would not support NATO. I would not support anything. I would just be like, hey, we're like Sweden. We're on our own now. We're neutral. If you want to trade with us, we trade. If you don't want to trade with us, well, that's too bad. You're missing out. That's kind of my mentality, and that hopefully will be my mentality when PA eventually becomes its own country. You got to speak these things into existence. That being said, I do like the slashing of regulations and government departments. That's always good. Getting rid of any government department is good. But I'd say this, just like I'm trying to bench 225, if I said, well, I almost benched it, like I had, it was right here, and then I was trying to breathe, and then it was almost, and then my spotter picked it up. You guys wouldn't say I did that. Now, my friend said, like I was telling Max Henry, I said, well, he's not an anarcho-capitalist. An anarcho-capitalist people like you're a purist. No, I'm looking at like a difference between a minarchist and an anarcho-capitalist. There are, to me, actual real world standards of how it is. Just like if I said, I'm lifting weights, I'm lifting this much. To me, an anarcho-capitalist, you have everything privatized pretty much. I'd even say, fine, if you don't privatize one or two things like the commons, okay. But an ANCAP would say I'm privatized. Like, let's say I could just remake Pennsylvania. The police would be privatized. You'd either have militias, private security, or the Boog. There are no more police. There is no more military. It's either militia, the Boog, or just, your regular, civilians getting together and doing firearms training and forming their own militias. You also would not, to me, use the USD. You would use competing. If I honestly do not even like the USD in and of itself, I'd say we need competing currencies. I would literally go to what's the town you're from? I can't think of it. I know
Vandergrift.
Vandergrift. I would go to Vandergrift and say, what's the most abundant resource there?
Sure.
And and I actually don't know what that is, but I'd be like, okay, let's just say it's lumber or let's say it's Hondas. Let's say I'd be like, all right, we'll make a currency based on that. Like, I want you to peg every currency against this actual real world thing. And then I do that at the state level. I believe in competing. I believe if you're an ANCAP, you have to introduce competing currencies because that is a real free market. Because if you have competing currencies, then there's competition to the USD. I don't believe you take a failing currency to a failing economy and try and make that work. I don't believe in trying to dollarize your economy. That was a huge criticism I had. Why are you taking the USD? The USD is failing. Your economy is failing. It's literally like, in my opinion, you have somebody who's an alcoholic and you're like, well, I'm going to switch you from beer to whiskey. I'm like, I get your pesos failing, but this is not helping. Like, this dude needs water. What's water? Competing currencies. I'm not an economist, though. I watch Robert Murphy while I'm practicing my scales, maybe like you do. And I listen to Peter Schiff sometimes, although he does shill for gold more than I'd like. But that's my criticism. If you're going to call yourself an anarcho-capitalist as well, for the communists that are protesting, what I would do is be like, look, hey, I get that you don't agree with me. Here's what we can do. Look, here's books on this. Why don't you, if you don't like me, I believe they're called favelas in Spanish. Wouldn't every anarcho-capitalist I know in America, which people say the ANCAPs are the Americans of the anarchist world, which fine. I agree with that. Why are you not allowing secession? All right, fine. You don't like me. Instead of jailing you, leave. Like, let's say Solosky got in, or I got in, or something like that. And people are like, Kareem, if people in Vandergrift say you suck, good. I don't like it. Leave, secede from the state. Go to the local level. I suck. Stay away from me. Secede. Greensburg secedes from Pennsylvania. Like, my dad got shocked. He's like, Kareem, you want Pennsylvania to secede? Yes. And then he's like, you want Latrobe to secede? Yes. And I want Vandergrift to secede? Yes. I want Greensburg to, these are little towns, by the way, Jeremy, to give you context where we live. And that to me is the anarcho-capitalist vision, having small towns seceding, competing currencies with private police and militias, and which act as police and also security, and also allowing for a real free market. And I would add, as an anarcho pluralist now, because I've read a little bit more, working with some of the people who might be called, might call them, be self-identified as agorists or ANCOMs, or even, there's a very small amount of them, but primitivists or black flag, working with them to establish mutual trade. That's my look at it. Now, I'm not an economist, but yeah, I kind of wanted to get those ideas out. So yes, the slashing of regulations, good. The slashing of some military generals, good. The slashing of a lot of things, good. I think he's more of a minarchist than an ANCAP, but expanding the drug war is anti-libertarian. And yes, putting facial recognition, and increasing taxes. He did increase taxes on, I think, some kind of imports. I'm like, man,
Sure.
he's kind of doing some like Trumpy type tariff things, which is bad too. So it's really a weird mixed bag. And I'm kind of watching what he's doing. Some things I'm like good, some things I'm like bad. So I'm trying to take an objective stance. The person who I really liked at the WF just told Klaus Schwab to, go F himself, which I think is good. So, that's my assessment. I mean, I'm trying to figure it out. It's confusing. I was curious though. You had Rollo Tomasi on. I'll switch from politics for a while because sometimes I get. I looked at his book, The Red Pill, and basically what I got, if I were to condense it down in an elevator, is when you're engaging in relationships, demonstrate that you have potential options always. Never be like I am, complete, and stay away from marriage in the West because the male, no matter how good it is, and I've seen this, can get screwed. They can take like your net worth, all you have nice guitars, like I'm gonna take all your guitars, your amp, and then you need some of those things. But the funny thing is that he is married, so I kind of like looked at him and I'm like, well, you wrote a whole book based on this, but I saw you and Brandy talk to him. What were your takeaways from talking to Rollo on like relationships?
So I've been me and Rollo actually talk, I don't want to say regularly, but we kind
Really?
of DM back and forth over here and there. Yeah, well, we also have a similar taste in music. He played my band's latest single, Common Crown's Cry, at the end of his show, I want to say a week or two ago. And we just kind of I wouldn't go that far, but we just kind of shoot the shit regularly and just most of the time talk about music and then sometimes about guests that may be coming on the show that Brandy and I do, Cognitive Vigilance. But I've been familiar with Rollo's work for probably, I want to say, the better part of maybe 8 years.
Really?
Originally, oh yeah, I've known who he is for a while, and he's been writing kind of like relationship and stuff in the Red Pill Manosphere kind of communities.
Did you tell him you got married? What did he say?
He didn't really have a comment about it because it's
Interesting.
I'll get there. But he's been writing in or about intersexual dynamics since about the early 2000s. So originally it was actually him that said, well, you took the red pill back in 2004 in reference to intersexual dynamics about understanding women's nature. So I've been a huge fan of his work for a very, very long time. I read The Rational Male, the original one, The Rational Male, Positive Masculinity, and the Rational Male, Preventative Medicine. I got the order a little bit mixed up, but his first book came out in 2013, and then I believe the two after that, and he has 5 books total, but I've only read the first 3. I originally heard of him because there was a guy on YouTube, Entrepreneurs in Cars, Rich Cooper, who had kind of promoted his work a little bit, and then from there it was. As Ryan Stone, who's another friend of mine, has said that like people's journey typically goes like Rich, Rollo, and then Ryan. And now that I'm kind of friends with all those guys except for Rich, obviously, I've just always really liked their work and really liked their takeaways. Now, when it comes to marriage, nobody in the red pill space is going to tell you don't get married. What they're going to tell you is that marriage is a bad deal for men, right? That's different, right? There is no prescription when it comes to red pill praxeology. So basically, when people are talking about red pill or manosphere topics, what a lot of people fail to understand is that red pills, as it is and should be understood, is a praxeology where you're observing human behaviors through the lens of sociology, cultural anthropology, and different sciences to make your life better or help you make decisions with full awareness, right? That's the whole idea of red pill, if you will, is you took the red pill and you understand the nature of everything and how you can live your life accordingly. So once again, the idea of red pill praxeology, when if you were to use the red pill lens, so to speak, to look at marriage, you would say that marriage is not a good deal for men because there's very, very little benefit, but there's a lot of downside. Now, Rollo got married 27 years ago. I'm not here to speak for his situation. I can speak for mine. And for me, I love my wife and I feel I have a great connection with my wife and we want to have a family. So, it's pretty clear by all available data that the best situation to have children in is in a married household with a mother and a father. So that was my rationale for my decision for getting married. And, no, it's funny. No one in the manosphere has ever given me any shit for it. Like, we all understand, yes, marriage can be a bad deal for men, but I also understand things that the average guy doesn't. And I know I'm not an average guy according to pretty much all available stats when you look at, whether it be body composition,
Mhm.
weightlifting numbers, income, things like that, that put me out of the average range. Now, does that make me some superior grade person? No, I work my ass off to maintain everything that I have, and that's kind of like the whole MO is that as a dude, you have what's called a burden of performance, right? Where like as if you're a woman, you're born and generally as long as you don't get fat you're going to be okay. Like there's going to be, they always say there's an ass for every seat. Well, for women there really is, and there's probably
Mhm.
multiple chairs if you catch my drift. But that being said, as a guy you're expected to do things. You're expected to be somebody of stature, somebody of affluence, somebody who's attractive, somebody that worked to get to where they're at. um Understanding that and implementing that in your life is going to put you leaps and bounds above other people. And
I
what's
agree.
frustrating about a lot of this kind of stuff is that like guys will look at this and say, "Oh, it's so hopeless. The West is ruined. I can't find my trad wife." Well, no. If you're willing to just put in like a cunt hair worth of work, like if you just go to the gym maybe 2 or 3 days a week, you get a little bit of low intensity steady, start cardio in, you work a decent job, you're
Mhm.
gonna be fine unless you have some major social issues. But I mean that's the other thing too, is that once again there's no prescription. But what red pill praxeology could teach you when you start learning about cultural, or cultural anthropology, and you read the work of someone like Dr. David Buss or Marty Hazelton, you'll learn that hey, well, there's different social dynamics and different ways that I can go about interacting with people that make me more attractive to the opposite sex, which is generally what guys who are straight are looking for. And if you're not, that's okay too. But
Mhm.
red pill is generally positive male identity and positive male identity and male sexual strategy. It's not for women. It's not even entirely for gay men. But it's just about a space for men to share notes and share ideas about what works for them in their personal lives.
So would you consider and maybe you get this question a lot, maybe it'll be annoying, but I'm a fucking obnoxious shit. So
You're good. You're good.
like fucking Andrew Tate and the Fresh and Fit cunts,
Mhm.
do you consider them a part of the red pill?
They would consider themselves that, and I would say that they definitely use red pill praxeology. Although Andrew Tate no longer considers himself red pill, and I don't like any of those guys because like they're not really doing what I think kind of the root of the manosphere is, which is basically, like I said, positive male identity and male sexual strategy. They kind of get into the point of okay, well, Andrew Tate was let's traffic women
And
and
girls, he's a groomer.
yeah, right. We'll do all this kind of stuff, abuse people, and really use red pill praxeology in a very, very destructive way, right?
Mhm.
And then now he wants to distance himself from it. He wants to appeal to right wingers. So that's why he's saying all this stuff about saving the West and talking about marriage and now showing his kids that he has. Um, and then Fresh and Fit is just kind of like blood sport, right? People want to see women get their comeuppance. They want to hold these bitches accountable, right? You give the women a white claw and then you scream at them, get the fuck off my podcast. And
Yeah.
then all your guys that can't get a date at home feel like they got their, they feel like women were held accountable and like justice has been served. But who's better off after all of this
Yeah. How
stuff
does
that I'm
it
talking
sound?
about right
Well,
here?
also, I mean, like on that score, the ironic thing is, there have been women who have been interviewed about why did you go on, oh shit, there have
Fresh
been
and
women
fit.
who have been interviewed about like why did you go on Fresh and Fit, why
Mhm.
did you go on the whatever show or whatever, and they like come back with, well, I have like an OnlyFans or some shit.
Mhm.
And like after these like desperate incels got like their fill of insulting me in the comments in the chat and shit, my numbers shot up. I got a
Yep.
lot of new customers because
Mhm.
like they want to see more of me. And so I don't care that they insulted me for a bit. They're insulting themselves more by claiming that I'm not who they want.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
feels
that's
modern day Jerry Springer stuff almost.
well, yeah. I mean, once again, that's exactly what it is. It's basically supposed to be blood sports for the sake of blood sports, where
Yeah.
Mhm.
guys aren't having a good, or yeah, men aren't having a good time with women now, right? So like the
No.
majority of women do not think the majority of men are attractive, whereas like men are pretty realistic about their expectations. But like if you look at like the OkCupid data, and there's a book called
Yes.
Dataclysm that I've looked through some of the sources in there, you're gonna find that once again, most women do not rate men as attractive. So therefore, men
Correct.
today are not quite having a good time with women. So when they get to watch Fresh and Fit and they watch whatever podcast and they see women get thrown off or they see women get told, they get their finger wagged in their face, then they feel like justice has been served. But much like Jeremiah said, some of the guys go and subscribe to the OnlyFans afterwards. But I mean, is there crossover there? Maybe. But I mean, they're also huge platforms. I mean, Fresh and Fit has probably over 1 million subscribers. Whatever has, sometimes up to like 50,000 live viewers. So you have to imagine that there's probably some guys in that crowd that just want to see a hot girl get naked, do stupid stuff on their OnlyFans.
Or they just want the money. But can I challenge you on one thing and get your perspective on one thing? I'll move to health. Is that, yes, I've seen the data, like the actual raw data. Like when people said COVID's the worst thing in the world, I said, okay, fine. Let me see your actual CDC data. And said, okay, it ain't that bad. Like I look at data, like when people say what's going on in Gaza, I don't just say like, oh, here's a TikTok. I see what are the actual numbers that I can find that are not, I think, manipulated. So Yemen, same thing. I do look at numbers. I'm a data analyst. It just happens. Now I've seen the expectations that the average woman, and this could be from social media, I don't know, or it could be from the platform, those platforms like OnlyFans. They say like, okay, like what's your dream guy? Oh, a guy who's 6 foot, makes 200,000, like that. Like there are women who, regular women. I don't know if like, because I wasn't dating in the 90s as a kid, but like I didn't. There are, in my opinion, elevated views of like, well, I need like Hercules, and I'm just average things. So I guess my challenge is if they think that, but then you said like if you're just a regular dude who works pretty hard, has a good job, and I can't lift as much as you, but I'm trying to work, and I think I'm above.
Any W is a W to celebrate.
And any win's a win to celebrate. I agree, but I feel because of these unrealistic standards, and because of some of the behavior that is non-traditional. Like to be fair, I remember my friend said he went to Greece and they cooked and cleaned and all that stuff, and they wouldn't let him do a dish, and it's kind of funny. Like I'm completely. When it comes to my social life, I know people think it's contradictory because I, am all for, any social thing you want to do as long as you're not hurting people. I have some really awesome trans friends, gay friends, all that type of stuff. But like when it comes to my personal life, I'd like to have that trad wife. But honestly, it is kind of, I do think it's difficult to find that. I'd be curious, since the standards are so high, I don't think it's that easy because I get ghosted a lot, and they say like, oh, you're great, you're good looking, whatever. I get ghosted a ton of times. I get texts and then they vanish.
Sure.
My relationships haven't been so good. So I guess, and I've talked with Jeremy and friends at that, but I'm still trying. But I'd be curious because I saw you had opinions on that. What's your opinion of like the whole passport bros thing? I don't know if you enroll
passport bro. I don't really have a problem with passport bros, but I think the thing is that people don't understand just how widespread this gynocentrism, if you will, really is. I mean, like even where I've grown up here in small town Pennsylvania, there's a girl that I used to come with me to get tattoos, and she had an OnlyFans at one point. So I mean, like if it's coming to rural small town Pennsylvania, it's everywhere. Like you cannot escape this at this point. So basically, we're gonna have to learn how to deal with this. Now when it comes to women's expectations, there's the medium's always the message, right? Like if a woman is ghosting you, regardless of what she says, pay attention to what she's doing. Right. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Like, no matter what she says, if she says, oh, you're great, I'm so attracted to you, I can't wait to spend time with you, but she's not spending time with you, then what should you pay attention to? Should you pay attention to what she's saying, or should you pay attention to what she's doing?
What she's doing.
You should always pay attention to what somebody's doing. So now, once again, when it comes to just being average, the average dude is like 195 pounds, can't even deadlift like 300 pounds or something like that. Can't squat like over 200. These are very, very easy numbers to hit after like a year of consistent good lifting. You don't even need any crazy supplementation. Yeah, maybe creatine if you're really hell-bent on it. But like, it's really not that hard to break out of average. And like everybody says, oh, well, you got to be a 6 foot Chad. Go up to somebody and ask them if they know what 6 foot looks like. Nobody knows. I'm 5'11", right? Yeah. Nobody could tell you if I was 6 foot, 6'2", 5'10", 5'8". People would just say, oh, yeah, if I told them I was 6 foot, everybody would run around and say I'm 6 foot. people don't really care that much.
Yeah.
Now
Identify as 6 foot now.
Well, see,
there you go.
And like the other half of that, like not to interrupt, but
No, you're
let me
okay.
just
Yeah, go ahead.
let me just share my screen for just one image, because I think this image is important for a lot of these alleged trad dudes to understand, because so many of these dudes, like they complain about, you know, what you're saying, gynocentrism, but they're not willing to become the center of anything. They're complaining, but they're not solving problems. They're saying that, like, you know, there's this gap between expectations and reality, but they're not filling it. And I think that that this can be adequately described by this image that I'm going to be pulling up here, because when this is the kind of person who's saying, I want somebody trad, I want like my perfect wife, this is what you're getting. This. And so much of the time, like, these people are not willing to get their reps. They're not willing to go outside. They're not willing to improve their standing.
Yes.
They're not willing. And that's, like, to me, and this is me being a cynical cunt because that's who I am, this is 95% of dudes. Like, they're not trying to and I'm not saying it's entirely their fault. Like, the society has beaten down a significant percentage of the population, but at the same time, when you look at it from this perspective, it's sort of like, well, are you doing anything to increase your desirability? And if not, why blame women?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a fair point. Now, I mean, there's two ends to this, and I'm sure you wouldn't even disagree with this, but like women's expectations, once again, we know by all data that like women are not as reasonable as men are when it comes to their expectations. And even like Dr. David Bussett did a study, like I'm listening to the Evolution of Desire right now. It's a fascinating book because they study you know, short-term, long-term mating, and then obviously desire and like intersexual dynamics, studied all over the world, all these different cultures, all these different you know, countries. It's very, very fascinating. And pretty much what they consistently find is that like men's standards are pretty reasonable, whereas women's standards are a little bit higher. But I mean, the important takeaway here is that like women's standards are high because it's necessary, right? Like we wouldn't have survived as a species if women had just chose the laziest dudes out there.
Another question.
Let him cook. Let him cook. What were you saying?
Oh no, I was going to challenge one thing. Okay.
Well, just what were you saying though, Kyle?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I feel like you were on a good train of thought.
No. Well, basically, like the reason why women have to have high standards is because, like, if they went for like the laziest, least attractive guy who didn't seem to have good genes or couldn't defend his offspring, then you know we would have died off long ago because that wasn't a guaranteed mate for the future. So, I mean, this goes back to another point that I made earlier about a burden of performance. If you're not out there killing it, you know, doing the best you can in the gym, doing the best you can at your job, doing the best you can in your social game, and you know have a good network of people who look at you as a good person and want to be around you, who don't just see you as like an overall charming and enjoyable person to be around, then you know it kind of makes sense why no one would want to be with you. And Kareem, don't take this as I'm digging this at you, but this is just kind of like the general dynamic. Like you have to be somebody
you gotta
that's worthy of
increase
desiring.
your value in the sexual marketplace, or don't cry when you don't get bought.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
I mean, that's exactly it.
I'm not taking that as offense, but no, I was trying to say. Well, two things, then I'll move on to health because I know you have time, but just want to explore this because I've looked.
Yeah, we got a few more minutes.
There's a guy named Casey Zander who I've looked at some things, and some things I agree and I don't. But I think some expectations are unrealistic for like height is fine, but there's a certain point, like you're saying 6 foot. Does that necessarily mean you'll have better off? Well, not necessarily. It means you might command more authority. Also, at 200,000, or I've heard like 300 or 400 or 500,000, I don't think you're going to get that much. Like, okay, well, you can maybe get a fancier car or house, but that's not going to.
Okay, but like the question is, like, if a woman's looking at you, do you think she really knows how much money you make? Like, no, there's some subtle key.
Here's the thing that Casey Zander would say: hypergamy, which is just basically looking at sex, is actually a feeling. So you can have a stoner.
Women date up.
Yes, but what not. Okay, they date up based on abstract perception. Was what he was saying. So what does that mean? If she can look up to you like you're better, and I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean like you have a higher stand, or you act like you're the man, even if you're not the man. Like take this: if I can't, like, you can bench more than me, maybe somebody who makes more than me. If they were boring, if they didn't have high self, like take someone like Drake. I'm just pulling a name, whether or not you like Drake or not, or take someone like Channing Tatum. If Channing Tatum went into a room, had no confidence, even though he can bench more than me, he looks better than me. I take no offense to that. Channing Tatum goes into a room, he's boring. He doesn't act like the man. He's like, yeah, I suck. I'm not good at anything. He's not going to do that. But you get someone who looks like that, does not act confident at all. Like they're just like, I suck at life. But then you get somebody who looks like Ron Jeremy. I can't think of it or someone who looks like Lindsey Graham. And they come in the room and they act like, hey, I'm the man. I got things going for me. I'm so cool. Even if they don't, even if they're the random guy in their mom's basement, but they act like that, then she gets that confidence. And what he's saying is, it's not so much the physical stuff. She's not going to be like, and I've seen this. It's the perception of your self-worth rather than your self-worth. I don't know if that makes sense, but if a guy with a Honda Civic who's overweight has a higher self-perception than the guy with a Ferrari, which I've seen this, then he
can... The perception gap. There's a science term for that.
Hypergamy.
There's a science term for that, is all I was saying. Perception gap.
Yeah. So that's one thing I've been kind of studying, because I always thought, well, if I just grind, and I hit the gym, kind of, it'll make a difference. And funny enough, it really didn't. I'm like, I'm in the gym. I'm in a band. I do combat sports. So like, that's cool. Like they would say that's cool. But I'm like, wait, I thought oh, I'm in a band. That would magically, because I do a lot of different stuff. I have a podcast. But what I really started to see is, no, it's how I carry myself with confidence. And if I can have the self-perception, say I had the self-perception of Ron Paul or Spike Cohen, then more libertarians would be like, oh, wow, he's the man. Which sometimes I try and listen to Ron Paul speeches or Spike Cohen speeches before I talk. I know you don't like Spike, Jeremy, but that's how I.
Jeremy, sorry.
Spike is fine in a variety of ways. Spike is fine in a variety of ways. I just don't like some of the ways that he became a politician. Just real quick though, okay, you and Rollo are friends, so maybe this might reach him. I don't know. But I hate his checklist. I really do. I hate his checklist, the quickest path to becoming a high-value man. He tweeted this out.
It's a little bit of a troll. Yeah.
Do not get married, avoid family creation, vasectomy in your 20s, lift consistently, eliminate all sedation, learn game and networking, play to your strengths, build wealth, and resist easing up on your focus. Now, I don't like a lot of what this other guy has to say, but Sneeko was right when he brought up the problems with this checklist, most notably the vasectomy. The fact that, you can't reverse that. Like, it's very hard to medically reverse a vasectomy. And so what it's essentially saying, what people like Fresh and Fit use this checklist for, oftentimes is an excuse to be the kind of man version of a hoe that they complain about when women do it. And that's a rational critique of this list. And,
sure.
Maybe it's a troll, but I wanted to know your perspective on that, because I fucking hate the idea of anybody taking a vasectomy as a good advice on masculinity. Like, the rest of it, sure. But, the fucking vasectomy part kills it, absolutely, because there's no point to that other than to, encourage the kinds of, low-value men that are decreasing their value in the sexual marketplace. You can't be a hoe and then complain about hoeing,
Well, okay, there's a difference between the way that men and women interpret sex, and I'm not saying this gives you a lease to go fuck anything on two legs, but there is clear data on that, how women and men interpret sex differently. Now, if I told you the fastest way to getting laid was to go force somebody to have sex with you, I'm not going to say that word on your YouTube channel because I know YouTube frowns on that. Would you say, hey, that's advice to go do that? No, you wouldn't say that. That's the way that tweet is supposed to be interpreted, right? So it is a little bit of a troll, but at the same time, if you do get a vasectomy in your 20s, and I literally just looked it up on Google, according to Stanford Healthcare, the effectiveness of a vasectomy reversal is up to 90 to 95%, and I believe that's within
early
the first
on.
10. Yeah, I believe that's after 10 or around under 10 years.
Well,
So
no,
once again, I'm not advocating for people to get vasectomies, and Rolo would not advocate for people getting vasectomies either, and that's not what that tweet was saying.
It's a halving effect, just to be clear. Like it's not within 10 years, and like 10 years is a cutoff. It's like within the first few months, like it starts to have a declining reversibility, and like
Sure.
after those 10 years, it's pretty much just you can't.
Right. Okay, so basically, the point of the tweet is that, like, in the West, if you were to have a kid, right, that's going to greatly limit your ability to become a high value man, right? Because you're going to have your resources expended on a wife and kids, right? Now, once again,
Sure.
if you want to make the sacrifice to do that, then that's okay. Like, I am foregoing my potential of being the highest value guy possible by getting married, by playing in a band, by doing this right now, by podcasting as much as I do, because there are plenty of other things I could do that would make more money and make me a
Right.
more affluent guy. I choose to make those sacrifices because I enjoy doing them. We all choose to do things. I drink alcohol every here and there too. I'm the health nut, but at the same time, I like to enjoy alcohol because
I do
I
too.
just I enjoy the taste. I enjoy the feeling. I enjoy this, social ability of drinking alcohol
LOL.
with other
I've been
people.
clean and sober for 5 years. That's one of the things I agreed with on the list.
Yeah, well, but once again, like
the common crown has if someone in a common crown is royalty, would it be Crown Royal?
I wish. My some of my friends always joke that I put the crown in Crown Royal, or I put the crown in a common crown. But so basically, like, the list is just meant to be like, hey, if you'd want to become the highest value guy possible, then if you follow these steps, keyword is if. They're not saying follow these steps, it's if you follow these steps, then you'll more than likely get there the quickest. But I mean, it's the same way as saying, like, hey, the fastest way to get $1 million is to go rob a bank. Does that mean you should go do that? No. But it is one way to do it.
And like, I would just say, like, there should be number 9. Don't be a hoe. Don't fuck around the same way you would complain about and call a woman low value if she did.
Well, just men and women interpret sex in the way that sex affects our physiology is completely different, though.
Sure, but that doesn't mean that you're not doing the same kinds of things, and
Sure,
doesn't mean that you're not creating the same kinds of circumstances with a ton of like different chicks. There's a reason a ton of different chicks have baby daddies.
Well, so like when it comes to, let's say, and if you read the Iron Rules of Tomasi, that might be even a little bit more offensive. But
I got to read some of these books too. Like, to be clear, I have never read one of his books.
Yeah, that's
but go
fine.
ahead.
Yeah.
So like the 9 Iron Rules of Tomasi, I don't have them off the top of my head, but one of them is actually, no, it might not be. But one of the concepts in The Rational Male, his first book, was spinning plates. So basically, spinning plates is dating non-exclusively. So, like, this is obviously everybody does this now. This doesn't mean that you fuck everything that walks, but like the reason why dating non-exclusively, I think, is actually a good thing is that, like, you get to learn to be a sociable person. You get to learn what you like in a partner and what you don't like. And this doesn't have to necessarily be sexual compatibility. It's just like personality traits. Does this person enjoy spending time with you doing things that you like to do? That's kind of the idea of spinning plates. It's also just, once again, networking and then becoming a more sociable and more charming person. So this is why I think dating non-exclusively, as much as the trades of rail against us, I think it's actually a good idea. Now, once again, where you want to start and stop with this is completely up to you. I mean, there's full-on, like, diehard Christian guys that are virgins that go spin plates, date non-exclusively, and then there's guys that obviously do one-night stands, stuff like that. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to tell you, the information, and hopefully you make better decisions because of that.
You think if they've
like I prefer Bioneer in terms of masculinity to anybody on Fresh and Fit, whatever you have. Like, Bioneer's video on masculinity, I think, was actually really good. Do you know Bioneer?
No, I do not. I'll have to look them up. But like when it comes to masculinity nowadays, I almost don't use the term because literally all it means is like pertaining to men or, the male gender.
Right.
But like what a lot of people tend to do now is that, like, what if you ask Matt Walsh what the most like definable version of masculinity is how close you look like Matt Walsh.
And also he wants to fuck 16-year-olds, so there's that too.
Right. But I mean, like, the whole point is that, like, pretty much anytime anybody brings up masculinity, it's essentially just trying to sell you something. Like, hey,
yes,
if I sat here and defined masculinity for you, eventually you would say, well, yeah, eventually you would say, like, well, I'm not going to look like me. You're not going to look like Matovcik because that's the way I'm going to describe masculinity to you. So that's why I don't use that term, because like now it's so loaded, and once again, in everybody's view, it's going to be so subjective. So like in my mind, if you're a guy, work out consistently, you eat a remotely decent diet,
Mm-hmm.
be a very, very charming person, make a decent amount of money, and then like be somebody that somebody wants to, or that people
Yeah.
like to be around. That's kind of like the base recommendations I would give to anybody.
What
Yeah, yeah, and
about
those are all good.
those
Yeah.
are good, but I was gonna say if Dave Draymond meets Rollo Tomasi, then can instead of be spinning plates, dropping plates. But
That's actually a good one.
I think the pinnacle of masculinity is Liver King. Has to be because
Oh,
If
God.
you want, like, that's the reason I brought up fucking Pioneer, because he's a dad, he's a husband,
Sure.
and he's jacked, and he also has like multiple jobs. He's got like he's what you would consider a high value man, but he's also not a cunt about it.
Sure.
And I think
Okay.
a lot of people are.
Okay.
yeah,
I just pulled him up on YouTube. I will subscribe and check his stuff
Like,
out.
he's science related fitness. Like all the fitness shit I watch, I need them to be science related. That's my
Sure.
baseline.
I
Okay,
like
yeah,
that.
no, I
And
see
I
his
work out
opinion
like
on
an
that.
hour a day.
Cool. No, that's good.
Yeah,
That's
and
good.
we all work out. So I was actually going to ask Kyle, last thing, just to, because I know we had a discussion, I think at the LP or a couple of years ago or something like that,
Mhm.
on like biohacking and health and stuff. And here's what I think. I think obviously Dave Asprey, some of the stuff he says about all of his stuff is not all legit. I do like Ben Greenfield on most things, but I think it is expensive. But what I have seen has worked is ice packs do work if you position them correctly. I'm saying that red lights do work. And then next to me, I have black seed oil, magnesium, and NMN does seem to have an effect. But if you're not sleeping, not drinking water, doesn't really matter. Also, like those herbs, cistanche, things like that. I do take those, but then I strength train 3 times a week, which I think is the maximum, the best. And then I go for walks and do stuff. I'm not running. Jeremiah does more of the running.
Yeah, I just went for a 6 mile run in the snow yesterday.
So
Nice.
I guess kind of I'm curious, and I also do take. I have it next to me the creatine and glycine and put a
Mhm.
little bit of sea salt. I'm curious, do you, because you said like you tried testosterone, you tried different stacks and stuff like that. I know you're lifting extremely heavy, so powerlifting almost. Do you have a current stack that's working? I know you discuss health a lot, but I'd be curious.
Most of the biohacking community is just, I'm going to be honest, they're complete total charlatans. They have no idea what they're talking about. As much I hate to say that, because like that is, some of that stuff is maybe like the 5%, if that. We know that like if you lift consistently,
Mhm.
if you get sufficient protein, if you get good enough sleep, you're going to do pretty good, and you track your lifts and you're getting stronger, you're going to be good. I do 4 days a week. I do, a full body push and a full body pull 2 times a week. So like, Sundays could be like my deadlifting day where I do, basically like the way that my split works is that like on Sunday, I'm going to do deadlifts, hamstrings, glutes, lats, rear delts, biceps, and hamstrings. If I didn't say hamstrings, I apologize if I
Yeah.
repeated myself. And then on Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to do a push day, which would be your chest, shoulders, triceps, quads, and calves. So that's the way that I kind of train myself. So I do both those kind of workouts 2 times a week, right? So 4 days a week. And that kind of gives me enough time, between like other things and then spending time in the gym. Usually my workouts are anywhere from, I want to say probably about 50 minutes all the way up to maybe like an hour and a half. If I'm doing some compound lifts, like on my squat and bench days or like my deadlifting days, then obviously, the oxygen debt and the time it takes to recover from such, heavy multi-joint movements, the recovery time's a little bit longer.
Mhm.
Now, like current stuff that I'm taking, I take vitamin D, fish oil, a multivitamin. What the hell is it? Cordyceps,
Mm.
Toncatali,
Oh, nice. So
ashwagandha, rosea or Redalia rosea, I think it's called. Fenugreek seed, and there's one other one that I can't remember off the top of my head, and I apologize
And you
for
don't
that.
take calcium, magnesium, and zinc?
I do take those as well. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
yeah.
I take those at night. And some of that's in my multivitamin as well. But like
Yeah.
even all that stuff that I mentioned there, that's still just kind of like the 5%. I also take creatine and beta alanine and a fat burner because right now I'm trying to lose weight. And like the fat burner itself isn't necessarily going to like burn or incinerate fat. It's just meant like, okay, so there's caffeine in it and there's some other ingredients that may help shuttle fat around. I also take yihimbine. The caffeine is going to help as an appetite suppressant, so I do take caffeine as well. But that's kind of like what my supplement stack looks like. But really, like if you wanted like the best bang for your buck, multivitamin just to make sure your bases are covered. They're relatively cheap, and I don't see a reason for like not taking one. Creatine because it's so cheap and we know it's effective.
Yeah.
Monohydrate specifically.
Yeah, monohydrate because that's going to be the cheapest version. Like the HCl, like all the creatines work, but creatine monohydrate is just like the cheapest. And once
And
again,
it
there's no
works the
reason not to
best
take it.
scientifically.
Yeah, I mean, it's just once again, it's the cheapest. You might as well just fucking go for that. I use right now Tiger Fitness Creapure. Yeah, so basically, I just recommend multivitamin, maybe vitamin D, zinc, magnesium, and stuff like that. But you're probably gonna get that on multivitamin, and then creatine and maybe beta alanine if you really want to get carried away with it. But like all that other stuff I take, it's is it working?
Optional.
Maybe. Yeah. Like if you want to experiment and you have a
Well,
couple extra bucks, go ahead. But I mean, I've been training consistently for
and
well over 10 years at this point. So I kind of want to experiment to see what works and what doesn't.
And,
Yeah.
and one other thing, like just
Sure.
use the whole animal, because like the thing is, a lot of people like I don't. Liver King did not do this. Like he lied, and he has implants and he took roids. Don't do that. What you should do is you should use the whole animal, and by the whole animal, I mean bones. I make bone broth by boiling bones like all day, and it like not only means that the rest of the nutrients that you would like normally throw out or something are off the bone. It also
Yeah.
means that you're left with these bones at the end that you can do what I do. Don't do this because this is terrible for you. The doctors would never tell you to do this. But I make bone powder. I blend it up and make bone powder, and I'll take like that much of the bone powder every day. Yeah.
No, that works.
Yeah, I mean, there's like some collagenous tissue in there as well. So, I mean, generally, if you're getting enough calories throughout the day that you're not losing weight pretty rapidly, most of your bases are generally going to be covered. But like I said, the multivitamin and stuff like that is just going to kind of maybe do that little extra inch that you may not be
Yeah.
getting throughout your diet. So, like for me personally, I'd recommend people to have a diet of lean meats, lots of fruits and vegetables, and then if you want to enjoy junk food, like let's say a candy bar or some ice cream every here and there, that's okay too. Just not every day, right? I mean, I think that's pretty simple as to just say like you shouldn't eat ice cream every single day.
Nice. I have a couple questions because my stack's actually quite similar. Magnesium. The only difference actually is my multivitamin is a thing of bee bread, so I do eat that every day. And actually, I forgot one that's a big one. I'm taking 1,000 milligrams of taurine every day, and then even because I don't eat tons and tons of vegetables, I eat a little bit of vegetables, mostly meat, mostly fruit. I'm like closer to paleo than anything. I do agree with Dr. Saladino for the most part, because I've tried.
He's a kook. He's an absolute charlatan as well. But
Hey man, but carnivore MD here. But I am generally I do take Tonkat Ali. I take alpha ketoglutarate, sometimes arginine, sometimes citrulline, a little bit of beetroot before my lifts and some coffee. So yeah, but with ashwagandha, I noticed at one point I wasn't low T, I was lifting, but I was just not excited about anything, and I'm like, this is bad. I don't take SSRIs, but I feel I have the same thing. So I looked up the effects of, and I guess it's called anhedonia. So I was curious, do you cycle the ashwagandha so you're not like, man, I don't like. There were days like literally I probably could have seen like, oh, what's happening in Gaza? Oh, well, I took too much ashwagandha. It's fine, whatever. Now I'm not. Now I'm an angry dude. I just pretend.
I mean, my understanding of the data on ashwagandha, and I've mostly listened to like Holly Baxter and Lane Norton on this. It's not like hugely beneficial one way or the other, but there is some data suggesting that it's like it helps as a recovery agent. I take a very, very small dose. So I take like one pretty small pill in the morning. I don't know what exact milligram it is, but I take one in the morning and one at night, and that's pretty much it for that. So I don't think I would be overdoing it all. And I mean, I generally feel pretty good. Now, obviously, if I'm like too far in a cut, or if I've been training really hard, then yeah, you could probably feel a little bit bogged down. But anytime I start to feel like I don't want to train anymore, that's usually your body telling you like, hey, it's probably time for a deload. Like you probably gotta cool it off a little bit.
Yeah, I think like the best fitness guys I've seen, the guys who warned me about like Fedogia agrestis, because like Huberman says it's the greatest thing, but it's actually not. Like, then I'm like, oh, okay, well that's pretty good advice there, you know. And I looked and he said like you need to, if you do herbs and do blends, but cycle off the blends. And yeah, I noticed a little bit of boost for everything. I guess my last question is, you know, just we're both in bands. I'm playing the Hard Rock tomorrow.
Nice.
I was curious, what does the Common Crown have any big plans? Are you opening for Rollo?
Now, when we had Phil Labonte on, Rollo actually jumped in the chat and said, "Hey Kyle, tell him to start a band with us." And I'm like, "Yeah, we could do that. I'm totally down for it." So yeah, look for that. Maybe one day it will be me, Rollo, and Phil, and then whoever we could find for bass and drums. We'll
I'll
that
play
probably won't
bass.
happen. But
I've told Phil, I'm like, hey, I like your band, but you need to upgrade to an anarcho-capitalist and deathcore. That's the upgrade from
yeah, I think Phil's really good at kind of writing about themes, which I really, really like. And I kind of like the idea of keeping music, I don't want to say apolitical, but not like putting a time date on it. So like,
Oh, no. I was saying he's in a metalcore band, and I said go from metalcore to deathcore, like
gotcha.
despised
Yeah,
icon, like
yeah. Well, a lot of his influences were like kind of black metal. But a Common Crown, we got one show coming up in April 12th. That's the only show that I know, and I can't remember where the hell that's at off the top of my head. But if you go to Common Crown's Facebook page, you'll find that we just released our single "Cry" about 8 days ago. Kicks ass, pretty heavy by our standards. Yeah, that's all a Common Crown's got going on right now. We'll have some new music hopefully later this year, though. Because we've been writing a little bit.
I better hear like.
No, there's gonna be none of that. I promise.
You don't, no breeze, no.
No, Jen will not do any pig squeals. I can do the pig squeals, but that's not our band.
Okay. Do you do any breakdowns? Haven't
No.
heard of it yet. Because I know Jane Lee Machea, I think, like she does like First Angel Media, and she would like I'm like, oh, okay, she knows a Common Crown.
Yeah. I'm good friends with her. She's great.
Yeah, the photographs are really good.
Just gonna say, if you want a good genre for political stuff, can't really do better than either thrash or industrial. Like if you want metal that does those things, that's what it is. Because death metal's got a huge amount of problems in politics, I'll say.
Yeah.
But like what I will say is, industrial's excellent. Has a whole lot of really good, consistent conspiracy kind of vibes, anti-tyranny, anti-fascist, and thrash. I mean, Megadeth. That's all you need to say. Megadeth fucking shreds. It pones. Oh, and also shout out to Phil, mutuals for a while. Great guy. And also willing to call out people who need to be called out in a variety of ways.
He's Commander Phil Labonte. And I do like backwards some of their stuff.
Yeah, I mean I do too. But like my big problem with I mean there's no like big problem with backwards. It's just like they put such like a time on their first CD because they were like name dropping and stuff like that. Whereas like kind of what I was saying is that Phil Labonte's really good at writing about themes. Like think about Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival. They wrote about themes, and that's why that you still hear Fortunate Son to this day. You're not going to hear backwards, 20, 30 years later. Like I still like the music, don't get me wrong, but like it's old, it's dated. They put a date on it, and I'm sorry, I think that date's expired. And we've been hearing for how long now, like 6 or 8 years now, that they're going to put out new music, and I want to hear it, but like just put it out already.
Also, two things. First off, I do not like EJ, and then second off, fucking it all sounds the exact same. Like all that remains has been experimenting for decades, and these people have not.
Yeah. I do want to talk to because I've tried to talk to him on it. Maybe I'll ask you off camera, but I do want to sit down and talk to Phil. I know he's busy with doing music things.
He didn't do he only did the show because of Brandy. It wasn't because of me.
Well, I guess I'll keep reaching out and be like, yo, Brandy, I want to talk to Commander Phil. Gotta talk to the commander. All right. Well, Kyle, we hit a bunch of topics. Actually, we hit like 4 or 5 topics: Palestine, Yemen. Want to get off politics for a little bit, get your perspective. It was interesting perspective on role of stuff and doing a little bit of health and music. So, yeah.
The solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict is a no state solution.
I agree. All right, guys.
The solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict is a no-state solution, is what I was saying. Then my internet fucked. Sorry.
All right. Well, guys, this is the Essential Libertarians. Had an awesome time talking to Kyle Matovcik. You can go check out his podcast. Definitely do it. He's had big names on there. Maybe Vivek will hit you off. He's like, Kyle, I want to be on the podcast. No, I'm not running. I'm just kidding.
I'd have to smoke him on China. I would love to.
Vivek is such a fucking shill. Maybe come back sometime and we'll talk about how all these fucking Republicans are just grifters.
Yeah, they are.
Oh yeah, they are.
They get on they're like, let's we gotta fight China and Iran, save America. And I'm like, dude, Raytheon just signed a check. You don't really believe this. But yeah, you can check out Kyle Matovcik at Kyle Matovcik. He just had David DeCamp on. That was the good one. Also, I really thought...
If you go to my live, that's where a lot of my more recent ones are. I've been doing lots of live streams.
Yeah. So David DeCamp, I did see that one. Not Being Average, I did Nuclear Codillo. And he's had some really good ones. Adam Fitzgerald on the Israel-Palestine. We talked about that. I did not watch A Different Perspective yet, but, the Seed Oil podcast I do want to watch because, I've seen good and bad about that. But really a lot of good stuff here. The Manosphere one. And just go check him out there. And you can find us at The Essential Libertarians and at Anarch Unity. We're promoting anarchist unity. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.